ain't got no problem, man. Don't tell me. Man, don't tell me what my problem is.
No one, not even the season crew, could have predicted the raw intensity that would unfold when Scrappy and Khaotic were thrown into the same scene. What was supposed to be just another scripted confrontation quickly escalated into a fiery clash, one that would leave the cast and the audience shocked. The day started like any other, and the crew had prepared for another round of chaotic filming with multiple storylines. The Love and Hip Hop Atlanta set was electric, charged with the kind of tension only reality TV could bring. Lines bubbling to the surface. But for Scrappy, it was a different kind of day. He had been pushing himself to the limit lately due to a lot of personal pressure, family issues, relationship drama, and the show's constant spotlight. But it wasn't just the typical stress that made him tense today. It was chaotic chaos. The brazen newcomer had been stirring things up since he joined the show. Known for his sharp tongue and even sharper attitude, he had no problem picking fights, especially if it meant attention. And Scrappy, who had spent years in the spotlight, wasn't impressed by Khaotic's. The tension between the two men had been growing for weeks, and Khaotic had been subtly destroying Scrappy's reputation by making fun of his previous relationships and making fun of his position within the love and hip-hop circle. Antics aside, there was something about the way Khaotic had been challenging him lately, making fun of him, and trying to get under his skin that had been driving Scrappy insane. Scrappy had attempted to ignore it, but now he was unable to contain it any longer. The incident began innocently enough, with the producers arranging a confrontation between the two guys, thinking it would be only another verbal altercation. However, as the cameras rolled, they were mistaken. Khaotic went on the attack right away, his voice brimming with derision. "You've been on this show for how long, and you still don't know how to handle your business? I wonder." Khaotic's words were like daggers pointed at Scrappy's pride, and his smirk only made matters worse. Scrappy's jaw tightened as his patient began to lose patience. He had been trying to maintain his composure, but the constant mocking from Chaos was beginning to wear him down. Scrappy was used to confrontation, but this was different. Khaotic was undermining his own credibility in addition to discussing his connections and personal life. His identity on the show, and Scrappy wasn't going to tolerate that. "Man, you have to be careful what you say," Scrappy muttered in a low, warning-filled voice, but he wasn't one to back down. Instead, he pushed harder. "Watch my mouth," he said, "because I see it. You're not built like you used to be, Scrappy. You're just another washed-up dude pretending to be relevant." His words sliced through the tension in the room like a blade, and then Scrappy snapped in one swift motion, slapping across Khaotic's face with a sharp blow. The sound of the impact reverberated throughout the set, a loud crack that appeared to stop everything in its tracks for a split second, causing the crew, who had been recording with held breath, to scream as Kale's head suddenly wrenched to the side, his countenance showing shock and unexpected anger. There was no turning back now that the slap had started a fire that neither man seemed willing to put out. "You think you can just slap me and get away with it?" He was momentarily stunned, but he quickly recovered his composure. His eyes were burning with rage as he lunged towards Scrappy, pushing past the security team that hurried to intervene. The camera zoomed in to capture the chaos that was happening in real time. Chaos snarled, clenching his fist, and his body was stiff from anger. Scrappy kept his ground, his chest heaving with the adrenaline surge, his own fury matching Khaotic's. "You've been running your mouth too long," Scrappy shot back, his voice thick with venom. "Now do you see what happens when you don't know how to shut it?" The cast and crew were dispersed throughout the scene, watching in stunned silence as the two men squared off while still being held by security. The tension in the room was unbearable, and the only sounds that broke the silence were muffled shouts and harsh breathing. It was evident that this was about respect for two men who had reached a breaking point, not just about a slap. In an attempt to defuse the situation, the producers, who were both too proud to back down, promptly called for a break. The crew hurried to separate the men, pulling them in opposite directions, but even as the cameras continued to roll, the damage had already been done. The slap was a symbol of everything that had been simmering beneath the surface between Scrappy and Khaotic: the tension, the power struggle, and the rivalry. For Scrappy, the slap wasn't just an impulsive reaction. It was a declaration that he wouldn't allow anyone, not even Khaotic, to try to replace him or treat him disrespectfully in front of the cameras. Nevertheless, even if the conflict was temporarily over, it was obvious that their hostility was far from over. And as the cameras continued to document the fallout, it became clear that Love and Hip Hop, one of Atlanta's most explosive moments to date, had just occurred. As the gathering surrounding them hummed with excitement, he looked up and saw a terrifying calm descend upon him. There was a noticeable strain in the air as Scrappy's muscles tensed. Bambi, who was standing close by, could see the storm building because she had heard insulting remarks from Chaos, and she knew her husband would not take it well because Chaos was nothing new to him. He always had a grudge and often fought with the other actors, but this time was personal and the stakes were higher. Scrappy wasn't going to allow anyone to treat his wife disrespectfully, not on stage, not in front of an audience, and definitely not without repercussions. In a single action, Lil Scrappy stepped toward Chaos, his patience running thin. The crowd started to murmur, sensing what was going to happen, Khaotic still grinning, and he didn't back down. He was accustomed to being the center of attention, but he soon realized that the situation had gotten much worse than he had anticipated. The rest of the cast watched in stunned silence as Lil Scrappy suddenly raised his hand and slapped Chaos across her face. The sound of the slap echoed through the room, filling her face with a mixture of pride and relief. She had always known that Scrappy would protect her, but seeing him defend her so fiercely stirred something deep within her that knew they had a bond that could never be broken. Scrappy's actions spoke louder than words ever could, and some were unsure of how to respond, while others may have been secretly relieved that someone had finally put Chaos in his place for Lil Scrappy. Family comes first, no matter the price. As the cameras panned out, the question lingered in the air: how would this change the dynamic of the group going forward? Would there be chaotic retaliation, or had he finally met his match in Lil Scrappy? The show went on, but the atmosphere had changed. There would be no forgetting the slap that reverberated throughout the room, a reminder of the lengths Scrappy would go to for those he loved. Whatever transpired next, one thing was for sure: this drama was far from overly chaotic. He was accustomed to being the focus of attention, but he soon realized that things had gotten far worse than he had anticipated. Nevertheless, watching him stand, the rest of the cast watched in stunned silence as Scrappy's actions spoke louder than words ever could in that moment. Some were unsure of how to react, while others may have been secretly relieved that someone had finally put Chaos in Little Scrappy's place. The message was clear: family first, no matter the cost. The show went on, but the atmosphere had changed. As the cameras panned out, the slap that reverberated throughout the room served as a reminder of the lengths Scrappy would go to for those he loved. How would this change the group's dynamic going forward? Would there be chaotic retaliation, or had he finally faced Lil Scrappy? This drama was far from ended, regardless of what transpired next. Scrappy's muscles tensed, and the tension in the air was evident. Bambi, who was standing close by, could sense the storm building since she had heard rude remarks from Chaos, and she knew her husband would not take it well because Chaos was not straying.